Welcome back to the show. Have you ever wondered what is going on inside your trees? Today we'll be exploring how sound waves can reveal what the naked eye can't see. We're joined again by Matt Latham, owner of Arborist On Demand, who's going to walk us through sonic tomography, what it tells us about tree health, and how it connects to the way we care for and fertilize the soil our trees depend on. Hello, Matt.
Hey, Sarah. Great
Thanks.
to be here.
Thanks for coming back in. We're so glad you're here.
Yeah, likewise.
Can you share with everyone what brought you in today?
So it was fun. I got some new toys, and I came in one day, and we discussed that. And you said we have to talk about that on the podcast.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk a little bit about more advanced diagnostics when it comes to trees, how that plays realistically into our normal lives, things we need to think about as homeowners or tree owners, if you will, or tree managers, and really how those things impact everything in our life. Because they really do play a part. We love the trees that we live under, but when they fall in our house, when they cause problems, they can become a real nightmare, and they can really disrupt our lives, if not destroy them temporarily. So sometimes permanently.
And for those of us who don't know, what is a very bare bones explanation of what the heck is sonic tomography?
So sonic is sound, right?
Okay.
Tomography is, think of a topograph, is mapping. And so essentially what we're doing is we're using sound waves to map the inside of a tree. There's other forms of tomography, like you can use electrical resistance tomography, and they even have
Okay.
ground penetrating radar that you can take the antenna and map the inside of the tree that way. So
Wow.
there's actually a lot of different options, and it's really sad because most arborists don't even know that. And it's really unfortunate. Sonic tomography, believe it or not, has been around since the early 90s. This is not a new
Wow.
technology, but here we are 30 some odd years later, and you've never heard of it. You know, I didn't hear about it till maybe 10 years into my career. And again, ask a dozen arborists, and you'll maybe get 5 or 6 guys that know about it. And that's just unfortunate, and much less have access to it. And it's not the cheapest technology, but really when it comes to buying equipment that really helps our clients out, it just makes sense in so many ways.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, before sonic tomography existed, how did arborists assess the internal tree health?
Not very well. There used to be, before sonic tomography, there was a machine called a resistograph. And essentially what that does, think of like a seismograph, right? As you see the needle going up and down as the ground moves, is very similarly, we can drill into the tree, and there's a piece of tape, like a piece of paper that comes across, and as we're drilling, it's measuring that resistance. So
Okay.
you can kind of map the inside that way. The problem is now you just drilled directly into the tree. If there's pathogens that you've picked up on the drill bit, or that's usually why we're testing the tree with this resistograph, is because we suspect decay,
Yeah.
then you've just now pushed all of those pathogens all the way into the heart of the tree
Yikes.
and exacerbated it potentially. Maybe it's okay, maybe it's not, but it is a really big risk. The other way that we do it, and I kind of brought a little example here, is we would take a sounding mallet, and I still use this today. It's a great tool to have around.
Okay.
This one is made of rawhide because it's less dense than the wood that I'm striking, so it's not going to cause damage.
Oh.
There's other high density polyethylenes that we can use, things like that, but some of those are actually denser than the tree. So you want to be careful. A rubber mallet works pretty good, but it doesn't give a good sound wave. This or a walnut mallet, if we're working with a hardwood tree, is really the best option. But we just tap around, just test it to see how it is, check around different decay pockets that we see. And obviously there's the visual assessment too. We got to look at it.
What does a decay pocket look like?
Well, sometimes you see it visibly. Sometimes it's a little more difficult to tell. And a great example is pecan trees have a really thick bark. They've got a really dense bark, and sometimes that bark kind of flakes off. So I can look at that, see nothing wrong, even tap on it and hear nothing wrong, and that can be deceptive to me. But there are other visual clues that we can look for too. Like, for
Okay.
example, mushrooms. Mushrooms are a great way to tell decay. A really common one that we see here in Houston or in Texas in general, and really all across the US, is called Ganoderma. And Ganoderma, you might have heard of reishi, is a commonly used Eastern medicine. It's fungus, essentially, and it's good for the gut. It's good for overall health and things like that. But when it's on your tree, it's called a basidiomycete, or a wood decay fungus. And what it does, it sends out roots that basically eat the cells of the tree. And what happens is that breaks down the structural integrity of the woody tissue. Now, this can really be a problem depending on where the decay is. And so if you've got a decay, let's say you've got an oak and it's kind of leaning towards your house and you get decay on the front side.
Hmm.
Well, that's not going to be nearly as impactful as if it's on the backside on a deciduous tree. On a pine, it's the opposite. So we want to look at where is the decay and how extensive is it. And we can tell a little bit with the sounding mallet. We can tell a little bit by observing it and seeing if there's any signs up in the canopy. And really, if you think of like one leaf up way above, is generally there's a straight line that goes all the way down, path of least resistance, to a root hair somewhere in the soil. And
Hmm.
obviously, that's kind of the oversimplified version of that. But if we see decay or some sort of dieback in the canopy, we can kind of trace that down and say, well, maybe there's something going on in the root system here,
Oh,
right? And
okay.
so, same with decay. If we see decay there, we can kind of draw an imaginary line and look and see, okay, is there issues in the soil? Was there, maybe some sort of overwatering that was happening in the soil? Was there some sort of root damage that was caused by construction? Things like that. And so we really, as arborists, we have to use our brains. We have to do forensics
Yeah.
and really kind of, there was a great book written in the UK, I think back in the 70s or 80s maybe. And they don't publish it anymore, but you can get copies of it. And I really want one of the originals because that's just cool.
Yeah.
But it's called Body Language of Trees, the body language of trees. And the premise behind it is trees don't talk, right? You and I are talking. If I go to the doctor, I can explain to him, which I have been to the doctor a lot lately. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But I can tell the doctor what's going on. He can ask me questions
Right.
and use observation. The tree does not talk, right? I think we all know that, hopefully. It's depending on what we took the night before or whatever.
Right.
But generally they don't talk. So we have to look at signs. We have to look at symptoms.
Yeah.
And, I love that title, The Body Language of Trees, because that's what we're looking for. What is the tree telling me by the growth, by the way it's responding to things in the
Hmm.
environment, et cetera, et cetera. And so as arborists, we have to really put on our magnifying glass and our thinking cap and kind of play detective, if you will.
Oh, yeah. And, trees are incredibly expensive parts of our
Hmm.
landscape. Getting them removed, adding them, fixing them, it's a big investment. It's communicating to the rest of the plants in our landscape. So it's really important that you know what's going on from a professional.
Absolutely, yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's all tied together. They're
Yeah.
sharing the same soil. They're sharing the same airspace. They're all working as a whole ecosystem, and you can take that ecosystem and you can scale it all the way up to an entire forest, or you can scale it all the way down to that one little red bud, that you just planted a week ago or whatever. And it all works symbiotically. So, we talked about the last time I was here, we talked about the wood wide web,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so plants, believe it or not, will actually send off electrochemical signals when they're under stress
Mhm.
to warn the surrounding plants of some sort of danger, some sort of phytotoxicity, or maybe drought stress, things like that. And they'll actually communicate a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you're absolutely right. We have to look at other things surrounding. So, I'll give you an example is let's say I've got a client that has a really nice yard, nice house, big fan. We got a lot of those here in Houston, and they water every single day, right?
Mhm.
That's a bad thing. You and I know that, but
Yes.
they think they're doing right because they drink water every day. And so they want their plants to drink water every day. That's really common. We see it all the time. What we can do though is we can say, okay, what's going on not just with the tree, but am I observing any things in the surrounding landscape
Yeah.
that might contribute to this? And a good example is a pathogen called Phytophthora. I don't try to pronounce that or spell it. But it's a water mold fungus that acts like a vascular wilt disease. And vascular wilt, what I mean by that is think of clogged arteries in humans.
Mhm.
Is it basically the fungus lives in the vascular tissue of the tree,
Wow.
blocks its ability to transport nutrients and minerals and things like that, water. and even gas exchange.
Didn't realize it was so similar to humans.
Very similar, yes. And trees have a vascular system just like we do. It's very different in how it functions, but in how it functions, but the functions are essentially the same.
Wow.
And so one perfect example is boxwoods are almost always the first ones to exhibit signs of Phytophthora.
Right.
So if you got a big red oak in your front yard or a water oak here in Houston, and you've got boxwoods surrounding it, and the boxwoods are starting to decline, to me as a forensic arborist, I'm thinking, could it be Phytophthora? And obviously we need to diagnose that.
Yeah.
We need to get lab analysis done and things like that to really confirm it, because prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. But we can absolutely use the surrounding landscape as part of our forensic arboriculture, part of our diagnostics.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think we all need to regard our ecosystems as living, breathing creatures. So, now talking more about the tomogram,
Mm-hmm.
when you're looking at this color coded tomogram for the first time, what does the color spectrum mean, and what jumps out as like a red flag versus a healthy looking tree?
Yeah, that's a great question. So whenever, and I wish we had pictures, maybe we can overlay it, but
For sure, yeah.
of a really cool example is there's different colors, right? So, and it
Mhm.
depends on the brand. There's not just one type of sonic tomograph. There's multiple brands. There's the one I use is the IML Picus 3, which is a great one. It's tried and true for decades. It is made out of Germany, really great technology. The only problem I have with it is the centimeters to inches thing.
Okay.
Trips me up.
Yeah,
I'm still working
for
on that,
sure.
but for me, it shows from a brown spectrum down to like a purple spectrum. And
Okay.
there's some greens and some blues in between, some reds and pinks and all that. But the brown is solid woody tissue. So whenever we set up the tomogram, what we're doing is we're setting pins all around, and we set various sensors all there. And then we go around with a hammer, and it's got a sensor on it. So you strike the sensor, it measures the moment of impact, sends a signal to the computer, and then those sensors pick up that sound wave, and they're measuring how fast did it travel and how
Oh,
loud did it get there being, right? So it's measuring the speed and the strength of the signal.
wow.
And so what we could do is we can say, okay, let's say there's a decay pocket in the middle. Well, the sound waves have to go around it.
Mhm.
And if there's some soft portions to it, along with just a big hole in the tree, it's going to slow it down too, because those less dense woody tissues are going to conduct that sound wave much more slowly. So by the
Wow.
time it gets to the sensor, it's now created a kind of a map of that sound wave's path and how strong it was, how resistant it was, how fast it got there. And then once we do that on all the sensors, now the computer is going to do its think work. It's going to figure out, okay, what exactly is going on in there, and it's going to provide a map for us. And it's really neat technology.
So do you use that marrow hammer
Yeah.
for that?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, cool.
the sounding mallet, I don't. This one has its own special, way too expensive hammer.
Okay.
But it's basically got two cables. It's got one that's attached to the computer itself,
Okay.
and then it's got one that has a sensor on it. So when I strike the sensor, it's picking up that signal, sending that there, and then the sensors are also connected to the computer. They're telling the computer when it got there and how strong it was.
Wow.
So super cool technology.
So it's like an MRI for your trees.
Yes. Yeah. And I kind of, I'd love to say I walked in here today, but I actually kind of rolled in here. A few weeks back, I tore my Achilles, which is a very fun, no, that's sarcasm. Don't ever do
Right.
that, y'all. It stinks. Stretch before you do things. Stretch
100%.
before you do things, especially when you start getting older. There were some other factors at play there we won't go into, but when I get to the hospital,
Yeah.
they do what's called a CT scan,
Right.
right? So they're sending these signals through my body and essentially doing the same exact thing. And later on, once they confirmed it was a tear, they sent me to get an MRI to see exactly what the extent of the damage was, where it was, so that the surgeon can go in and make the right repairs. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very similar to what we do, because it's fun, because I was talking to the radiologist, and he and I go way back now.
Yeah.
I say, you're not going to believe what I do professionally. As
Yeah.
I'm sitting in there and I got these crazy sounds with the MRI machine going on. And I told him, I was like, I use this cool technology, and we had a good conversation about it. But essentially, it's the same thing that the doctor would do. is
Wow.
he's taking a look inside of me, which is weird, to tell
For sure.
to tell what's going on so he can make an informed decision about my unique situation. Same thing with the tree is trees are all living, breathing, eating organisms,
Mhm.
and they all have their own history. They have a lot of things that are going on a macro level, on a big scale, and on a micro level. And so by using the sonic tomography, we can look inside of the tree and essentially make the invisible visible, and we can make better informed decisions accordingly. So great tool. It's very functional. I still, to this day, use it almost daily. Anytime I go out and look at trees, I carry this in my back pocket because it's a great tool.
Mhm.
But by being able to look inside the tree, that now we're getting a much better, more thorough diagnostic to make a better informed decision.
Wow, that's really fascinating. And a tree might show significant internal decay but still be structurally sound. How do you determine the threshold between monitoring a tree and deciding that it might need to be taken down?
That's a very good question. It depends. Just
Okay.
like that's like the most common answer you'll hear me say is it depends. It depends on the circumstance, and it depends on the tree, and it depends on the surrounding environment. So every tree has some to significant amounts of decay in them.
Okay.
Sometimes when they're young, maybe there's none, but just like you and I have staph infection on us right now, trees
Lovely.
have diseases on them right now too. They
Yeah.
estimate there's one in particular called hypoxylin.
Okay.
Hypoxylin is a tree killer on a liver, right? Whenever it gets there, we pretty much know, okay, there's a lost cause, not looking good. We need to consider the future of this tree maybe not being there. But it's on, they estimate 98% of all the trees on the planet.
Whoa.
Same with staph. Staph can be a human unaliver,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
But if our bodies are doing what they're supposed to, we're healthy,
Mhm.
we're going outdoors and getting our vitamin D, we're eating our nutriments and taking care of our bodies, our immune system, thank God, is actively working all day long, and it's
Mhm.
taking care of those pathogens.
Yeah.
Same with a tree. So trees operate a little differently than humans. Humans, we heal in the sense that if I get a cut or a torn Achilles, my body's going in and it's replacing that tissue. You get
Yeah.
scar tissue, you get callus tissue, things like that. And of course, you scar up and you scab, and so your body's actively doing that. Well, trees don't have that ability. They can't just come in and start replacing the tissue. So what they do, we call it compartmentalization of decay in trees. And I think we talked
Okay.
about that a little bit before. But essentially, trees grow around it and they wall off and seal off those pathogens. So
Oh.
every tree I've ever cut down that was more than 50 years old had a lot of decay in the middle, or at least some.
Okay.
And so what that means though is not much because the tree's okay as long as the structural, think of like the, we call it the shell wall, is intact. And if you think of a pipe is
Mhm.
hollow, or an egg is hollow.
Yeah.
Both are really, really, really strong structures though. We know that from physics. And you know, we're in Houston. We got the whole oil industry runs on pipes, but they're hollow because they need to pass things through them. The
Yeah.
tree can be completely hollow, but as long as it's got a certain percentage around the outside that's
I didn't know
intact,
that. That's interesting.
usually pretty okay. And again, trees are adaptive in nature. So they're always looking for how do I stay up in the air and how do I fight the bugs off,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So they've got an immune system. The structure is really important. And trees, they actually they adapt their growth based on the movement of the wind. And so there's two main forces at play in a tree
What?
all day long. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. So this is, I call it genetic intelligence. Is they're
Yeah.
pre-programmed for survival. And so what happens is as the tree's moving in the wind, or let's say you've got a leaning tree, as gravity's pulling that tree down, or even down, you know, on a upright tree, the tree's going to adapt its growth based on those forces. And so it's kind of like every time your tree's blowing in the wind, it's going to the gym. And so whenever we go to the gym, we're essentially breaking down the muscle fibers and then our body fills in the gap. That's why you take protein shakes and all that afterwards, whatever. Tree's doing the exact same thing. Is as it's moving, and if you notice at the base of every tree is these big root flares.
Mhm.
That's what that is we actually modeled a lot of our architecture in, 1,000 years ago based on trees. We call them buttress roots, right? And you've got buttresses for cathedrals.
Wow.
It's the same exact principle. And we learned that from nature. We just studied nature and
Mhm.
saw, hey, it flares out at the bottom. We should do that to our structures. And now 1,000 years later, many of them still stand. And so, yeah, I think God did a pretty good job at creation, y'all.
Yeah.
Humble opinion is you look at that and all of that torsion as the tree's moving in the wind and it's blowing side to side, it's strengthening that base of it. And if there were such a thing as a perfect tree, it looked like a pyramid. It looked like a cone, is
Mhm.
because that's a really strong structure. The further out, the smaller the tree wants it to be. And we're noticing in nature a really cool phenomenon. We call it retrenchment.
Okay.
Retrenchment is a really fancy word that basically says that as the tree ages and as those decay pockets form and nature takes its course and things happen, the tree will actually reduce its canopy, especially during periods of extreme drought or extreme stress environmentally.
Okay.
Is now all of a sudden the tree's got less resources to work with, but a whole canopy to fill in. So you'll notice sometimes on a really stressed tree that the tips of it will die back. You've
Mhm.
probably seen this around where you get, it's a green tree. It looks totally normal and healthy, except the outer edge, you just got this layer of dead branches.
Okay, yeah.
Right. And so that is, I used to think, well, tree's dying, needs to be removed. I don't think that way anymore. I think, okay, what is stressing this tree out to where it's reducing its canopy height? Because there's two things that happen is A, it's easier to pull water and nutrients from the soil to a lower canopy, right? Less
Mhm.
gravity to fight, less problems. A strong tree has no problem with that. But the other thing that happens is now you've taken a tree that once was a certain height and you've lowered it. So you've reduced the leverage. So the tree is less likely to fall over in a storm, less likely to break branches off individually. And so
Right.
it's really a really unique thing that happens in nature. And we see it in every tree across the globe. Retrenchment, they'll start to pull their canopy down. And that's something that sonic tomography can really help us with is if we're looking at a tree that is doing that retrenchment, what's going on to stress it out? And is there decay that could potentially be causing that tree to say, I got to lower my canopy?
Wow. I didn't realize how much trees were just like us humans,
Yeah.
I guess.
They're just trying to live their lives and survive just like we are.
No
They just
doubt.
do it better
And longer,
and
usually.
longer.
Can tomography help identify where organic inputs are most needed in a tree?
So when you say organic inputs, I'm assuming you mean like biological solutions,
Yes.
things like that.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, this is so good.
Like maybe microlife or something.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And microlife is my favorite because here's the thing: is y'all, and this is what made me fall in love with this company. Is I was talking to Justin Grippon at Grippon Gardens in Lake City.
Yeah.
Great company, very passionate about what they do, and they've got beautiful plants because they use microlife. I think, but they're a great company. Well, Justin pulled me to the side one day. He's like, "Hey, have you heard of the new Microlife AF?" And I'm like, "AF? I've been on the internet. What does that mean?" And he says, "Well, basically, it uses biology, heterotrophic and other type of bacteria to suppress and consume fungal pathogens." So my assistant Sammy and I, we were just on a job site where we've got a pecan that's been
Mhm.
through construction, which is just about the worst thing you can do to a tree. But we've been treating it with microlife for the past few years as construction was going on and a little bit before. Well, there was some damage on one side of it because the contractors they're not arborists, right? They
Right.
they do things. And I used to think, well, we got to yell at them a lot. But now I think it's probably just ignorance. We should just teach them instead.
Yeah.
Right? It's like they don't know what they don't know. That's my job as an arborist to come in and try to be the liaison. And so they damaged the trunk a little bit. But the thing is again, we pulled the canopy height. We kind of recreated that natural retrenchment we were talking about.
Uh-huh.
We pruned it to reduce the leverage just a little bit, enough to where I think it's okay. The damage was isolated, and then we started treating it with biological products from Microlife. I used a lot of humic acid and fulvic acid, the Humates Plus. I used some of the Ocean Harvest and the Super Seaweed, and then I used the Biomatrix and the AF, Liquid AF.
Mhm.
And the reason I did that is because I know now this tree's exposed, right? Now this tree has an open, gaping wound where pathogens are going to be like, hey, free buffet.
Right.
Now they've got free entrance into the tree. The tree's stressed a little bit on its own, obviously, construction. This is a perfect target for any pathogen that loves to consume trees.
Right.
And so we started treating it on the trunk and in that general region in the root system, knowing that there's going to be a potential for pathogens entering. Now, historically, we'd spray a bunch of, chemical fungicides and all that.
Yeah.
But we were just there today and we looked at it, and the growth, the amount of callus wood tissue that's starting to seal that wound. This is only 2 years, and it looks like it's 5 or 10 years worth of growth. And so
Cool.
I think, and I've still got to find the studies to back this up. I think by applying those carbon products and those biological products and just those extra resources, that feeds the tree in that specific spot, which allows the tree to seal over the wound more effectively. So absolutely, by using the tomography, by looking at the inside, or even just by finding a decay spot and starting to say, okay, let's draw that line. What's going on up top and what's going on in the soil? And most of the problems are in the soil, by the way. What's going on there that caused that? Whether it could have been mechanical damage, it could be a fungal pathogen that's attacking the root system. So now we know where we can target and where we can apply the products more frequently or more in higher quantity.
Wow. So do high organic soils transmit sonic waves differently than low organic
I'm
soils?
not sure on the soils because mostly what we're measuring is the trunk and the root flares and branches of the tree.
Okay.
It doesn't tell me, the sonic tomograph doesn't actually tell me what's going on biologically. It just tells
Oh,
me what's
okay.
going on physically, structurally. And so, but again, getting into the forensic side of things is I can take that data. That's just a data input. Is you got a gash there, or you got a fungus there that's attacking the tree.
Right.
That's just a piece of information that I'm factoring in. And then I can look and say, okay, there's dieback up in that one specific side of the tree that's kind of correlated to where the gash is. And then let's say you've got a really saturated low spot in the soil. Well, now we can start to put the pieces together, and we can back that up by pulling lab samples and soil samples and things like that, getting some objective data. Again, prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. So we want to back that up with our observations and really just start to make a good decision. And by doing that, we have a much better shot of correctly addressing the problem versus just throwing things against the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like this is so similar to doctors. You know what I mean? You have your patient come in, they're having all these issues, and then you start to ask about their lifestyle, maybe their eating habits, what kind of movement they're getting, what kind of sleep they're giving, because all of this helps you get to the root cause of why somebody feels bad, why your tree feels bad. So, how does interpreting a tomogram rely on arborist's experience and judgment versus the software doing the heavy lifting? And is there a risk of misreading your data? Because
Very much.
somebody might go to the doctor and get great health results back, but they're still not feeling great, you
Yep.
know? So,
That's exactly right. Yeah, no, and that's a really, really good question. Because the founder of Sonic Tomography actually said that. He said 90, and this was back in the early 2000s. He said this, but he said 90% of the diagnosticians misinterpret the data. And so you're absolutely right to ask that, because just because you have an MRI doesn't mean you know how to read that MRI. So
true.
it takes a little bit of specialized knowledge. Because again, the location matters. Is the decay on the inside of the tree, or is it out towards the outer wall? That matters. Again, the amount of decay, how fast was it traveling? These all make a difference. And so you really have to understand not just the tree itself, which is critical, but you also have to understand how the machine works and how to interpret that data. And believe it or not, there's some really cool guys out there that teach classes on this. So I've been through a couple of them, and well worth it. It changes, just they think on a different level than I do. So to get their knowledge and their wisdom, it was absolutely valuable.
That's so cool. I've never really heard of anything quite like this available for plants, so it's so interesting. Do the cases vary between diagnosing a street tree in the city versus a centuries old heritage oak on private land?
Very much, yes.
Okay.
We have to look at them differently because there's different consequences. And I want to go back to the question you asked me about kind of the metrics that we use.
Okay.
There's really two things that I'm looking at. Anytime I'm looking at potential structural failure of a tree or just the structural integrity, how's the tree doing health-wise and how's it doing structure? The number one is we have to look at what are the potentials of failure? What's the
Okay.
likelihood that this tree is going to fail? But the other one, and I think it's more important because if a tree falls in a forest, who cares? But if it falls on your grandma, that's a problem, right?
Definitely a
Right?
problem.
Or yourself even, or your car, or your house. And
Yeah.
so there's what's the likelihood of failure? And then what are the consequences? So there's a whole program called Tree Risk Assessment Qualified or TRAC.
Mhm.
And there's a metrics that we use is what's the likelihood and what's the consequences. Again, if a tree falls in a forest, who cares? That's great plant food later.
Yes.
That's going to feed the forest and everything else. And so branch falls, totally normal. We call it nutrient cycling. Totally
Oh,
normal.
okay.
If you've got a street tree and that same branch falls and you've got people driving by,
You've got
that can be
traffic.
disastrous. And I do expert witness litigation work, and I'd say maybe 10 or 15% of the cases that I take, something happened, tree fell, and it did damage. People, houses. Well, if I'm factoring a house, it's probably 40 or 50% because I work with a lot of subrogation and insurance.
Okay.
Um, and so we look at like why did the tree fail and was it preventable? Was it something that the homeowner or the tree owner or the policy holder, the insurance company should have known, should have identified, and they should have done something about it.
Wow.
So I'll tell you one. I can't name the city or the anything, but a tree company was hired to come in and do a tree assessment, a tree inventory, which includes, by the way, essentially looking at it from a risk assessment. And you define what that means, how extensively, how closely are we going to look at it? Does it need to be a drive-by where we just look at it real quick, or do we need to go in and observe a little closer? Do we need to look at each tree individually? And so this company was hired to do a whole city tree inventory, like thousands of trees.
Wow.
And so it's a multi-year project and all that. And so they come in and big town square, everybody goes there. It's the cool hangout place in town. And they do the inventory. A couple weeks later, a 8-inch limb that was dead drops and it crushes a guy. That was somebody's dad, somebody's granddad.
That's
It
horrible.
absolutely makes a difference. What are the consequences? Are there people walking by there or driving by there? Is there a house underneath it? Are there multiple houses underneath it? Are there power lines involved? And all of those things really should be considered anytime you're managing a tree around people. Again, in the forest, let it grow. Let it do its thing. We don't have to
Yeah.
go in the forest and fix trees out there. We just let the forest operate until we get bugs from China and they come and wipe out whole forests. But that's different story, just like people have epidemics, so do trees, or pandemics or whatever. And so that's a different story. But generally speaking, we definitely manage that heritage oak that's been there for 200 years completely different. We just leave it alone generally and let it do its majestic thing. Maybe we have our weddings and have a picnic under and all that periodically, but the tree that's on the side of the road, yes, we absolutely have to look at that as a potential hazard. And so we want to look at things a little closer. We want to do things like pull out the sonic tomography. We want to look at it. What's the size of the limb compared to, does it have decay on the branch? Are there visible things that we can see? And because it really does matter, and as much as I love trees, I think people are more important.
Yeah.
Humble opinion. I'm a people too, so I'm biased. But it's really important that we look at it a little more closely. And most cities, most municipalities have tree protection ordinances, and part of that is codified into law that there's are
Oh.
certain tree protection, but there's also certain tree preservation and people protection ordinances included in most of those too. So if you've got a dead tree on the side of the road, it's got to go. And I'll give you an example is there's a large city here locally. I'll just go and say it. The Woodlands, Texas has a lot of trees.
Yeah.
And they've
The
got, I
woodlands.
think, hundreds of miles of walking paths. A lot of people out there all the time.
For sure.
And there's a lot of liability. So they're smart. Their board of directors is filled with very smart individuals that, CEOs and things like that. And they understand liability. And so what they do is they hire a tree service out. So now when their arborist is going around and they're looking at trees
Mhm.
and they see an unalive tree, a hazardous tree that could potentially harm people, they call it into the tree service. The tree service has X amount of days to get rid of the hazard.
Okay.
And I think part of that is liability, but part of it's just good management. Part of it is just we live in a city with trees. We love our trees, but we recognize that they can be a hazard.
Yeah.
And there's a joke that we talk about in trees is the only safe tree is a chipped tree. Because let's say you get an EF5 tornado come through, there's not a tree going to be standing. Most of the time, trees are fine, right? They're
Mhm.
going to do okay. They're going to adapt. Most of the problems and the reason they fall and break is actually because of us. And
Yeah.
sometimes trees just get old and they die. But for the most part, poor management is a big reason why trees fail. And I'll give you an example is Hurricane Beryl. Centerpoint was under a big class action lawsuit because of the amount of power outages that were out.
Mhm.
Was they suspected, and it hasn't been proven yet, of course, but they suspected that there was either negligence. But I kind of have a different theory. I think that's part of it. Sure, they need to be on a more consistent pruning cycle. And please don't sue me, guys. But
We'll work
the
on cutting this
right,
part.
yeah, cut. But for the most part, there's the negligence portion, which is fine. We can consider that. But there's also an over management portion of that too. We have a lot of water oaks here in Houston, and knowing water oaks don't like to compartmentalize very well, and they tend to have big problems with fungal pathogens. Then if you're overwatering that tree and it's near a power line, now you've softened the roots or you've introduced pathogens, created a perfect breeding ground and growing environment
Oh.
for wood decay fungus. Now you get a big storm or a small storm come through and it can push that tree over much more easily. So I think a big problem,
Wow.
part of the problem is, yeah, there's probably some negligence, whatever. But I think a big portion of it is we love to water here in Houston. And then we get months where it'll rain almost every day here in Houston. And on top of that, we have a clay soil, which harbors water, traps water in there and locks onto it electrochemically. And that can, again, just be a perfect breeding ground for fungal problems. The main thing to understand, though, is it does matter. Is whenever we're looking at a city tree or a tree in our backyard, we have to look at that very differently than a tree that's grown out on our acreage out in the field somewhere.
So I think you answered the age-old question of if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's around to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is who
Who
cares? It's not
cares?
in a city.
That's right. And again, that's pre-programmed, part of God's design to fix the forest and feed the forest. It's a beautiful thing when a tree falls in a forest. Humble opinion. Did it make a sound? I don't know. I make sounds when I'm using sonic tomography. That's all I know.
So, whenever you show a property owner a tomogram of their beloved backyard tree and it's full of decay, how do
Mhm.
you have that conversation and how do people typically react?
I'm just really glad I'm not a medical doctor. I'm just a tree doctor because
Yeah,
trees are sentimental. We love our
totally.
trees. They become part of our yard and our house and even our family in a lot of ways. I call them our green pets, right?
That's
Is
beautiful.
like I grew up. I got a picture of when I'm 3 years old climbing a
Uh-huh.
tree. I think I might have
Yeah,
sent that
we
to you. Yeah,
posted
that's awesome.
that.
That was my grandmother's tree. It was a tri-stem red oak, and we have 2,000-ish acorns from it. So one day I'll start a tree farm using that. But
Yeah.
different story. So it is. It's a hard conversation for me personally. Maybe some people are a little more callous than I am. I don't know, but it's a hard conversation. We have to look at it as this could potentially. Yeah, I may be saying you have to get rid of this tree, but what I'm also saying is, hey, I'm potentially saving your life, or your
Yeah.
home, or your car, or your neighbors, or whatever. And so it always stinks. I always hate having that conversation. And again, I'm just really grateful I'm not a medical doctor because I don't know if I can handle it. But I have to be honest. And actually, as an arborist, I signed an ethics agreement saying that it's fun because I'm speaking about this with the ISA conference next month. The last paragraph in the ethics agreement that I signed as an arborist, that everybody who's even a member of ISA, by the way, if you're a member of ISA, you signed it too, know this. I have an ethical obligation to tell the person of that hazard. And it goes beyond that. If I see a city tree, I have an ethical obligation to tell the city about that dangerous tree or that hazardous
Wow.
tree. And so it's, it kind of gets annoying because sometimes I have to write reports that I don't want to write. I have to send it off to people that I don't want to write. That I don't even know this person, that lives here, but their house is at risk and it's a
Oh
city tree.
my
City
gosh.
needs to know about that.
I did not know that was even happening.
Neither do arborists. Um,
Well, now they do,
now
hopefully.
they do, hopefully. So yeah, it's always a hard conversation, but I have to look at it objectively, not just as, hey, I'm getting rid of this person's tree or telling them they need to, um, but I'm actually helping them make a good informed decision.
Oh, yeah.
And me personally, I really want, if I don't know these things, I really want somebody to tell me, because
Oh my
if I don't
gosh,
know
of
about a
course.
problem and it causes me problems, that stinks. If I can know about it, now I can do something about it. So
Wow.
making a good decision is essentially my job, is helping people make those right decisions regarding their trees.
That's incredible. I have learned so much today. Matt, thank you again for coming in.
My pleasure.
Do you want to share with everybody the events you're speaking at or anything else new you have going on or
Yeah,
where they can
yeah.
find you?
So, best way to reach out to us if you want to get sonic tomography or even just look at your trees and figure out why it's not doing so hot. Arborist on Demand is our website, .com.org. That'll all lead you there. Arborist on Demand. You can always reach out to us at info@arboristondemand.com as well. I love teaching this stuff, if you couldn't tell. I think not enough guys do that, and gals, but we really need that in our industry because, well, quite frankly, I'm the only one that can, right? It's like arborists are the only ones that really understand trees intimately, and some dendrologists and urban foresters and things like that. But my job is to know this, and I saw a gap. I love teaching this. I did get invited to the International Society of Arboriculture, so we're flying into Detroit next month, and I'll be
Cool.
speaking on arborist liability. And so, how do we avoid it? How do we make good decisions in making helping our clients make good decisions? And how do we, things like that, ethics agreement that I signed. And so I love doing that. We also have a Facebook group where I teach this stuff. It's Ask an Arborist, or you can go to our Facebook page as well at Arborist on Demand.
Cool. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Oh, and our YouTube channel too.
Oh, yes.